Bloop Diet, the internet series I started back in September 2022, poking fun at other cartoons I'd seen about a giant cryptid fish that floats forward and eats things of an impressive size. When the first shorts that I did on Bloop exploded in popularity at the same time, I decided at that moment to dedicate my time to developing it as a full cartoon series with an ongoing storyline. A nonsense storyline, yes, but there is a narrative in there. Somewhere. Today we're going to cover the first 2 sections of the Bloop Diet storyline, and that doesn't sound like a lot, but trust me, there are a ton of episodes to cover. The aim of this video is to tell you which episodes contribute to the story and which ones are just silly skits involving the characters. I'll also be letting you know how canon they are, like some of them are pretty important to the story and others are like kind of important but not really. We'll cover as much as we can. Let's go! The Bloop Diet, You Won't Believe What the Bloop Eats Next, is the premiere episode of this series. Now, one thing to note about these earlier episodes is that I was writing more for like the shorts themselves, so like each of these are like 20-second ideas that are all like stitched together into a final cartoon. You know, Bloop meets this fish, Bloop meets that fish, this joke happens, that joke happens, and then it's over. So really all that happens is Bloop ends up eating a couple of fish and meeting a bunch of Bobert-Rob characters, like Pool Shark, Humanity, and Goblin Shark. The basic structure of this one is that as the cartoon goes on, he goes from eating small things to bigger things to bigger things, and then finally ending on him eating the entire planet Earth. So, clearly, this entire episode is canon. I found him eating the Earth to be a ridiculous storyline detail to keep in, so I'm insisting that it's canon to the story, in spite of its nonsensical qualities. Which of course leads to the Bloop ate Earth, so much for the Bloop Diet, a play on the idea that Bloop is clearly not on a diet. I mean, he's not watching what he eats, he's only watching it go into his mouth. Here we tie in some other shorts that I'd been producing at the time experimentally. You know, like the spray painting redneck and the whole fall is here dog skit. We also introduced the news anchor from the meteorologist cartoon that I did, who basically narrates everything going on from the human perspective. This episode is completely canon also, even the sillier bits with Goblin Shark's buddy Goblin Elephant. Goblin Shark's always been kind of a mischievous imp kind of a character, sometimes doing things that defy explanation just for the sake of a visual joke. I will admit that as the episode goes on, it gets really unhinged. I was still treating these episodes as a collection of joke ideas instead of a true storyline. Like I had the idea of like a basic storyline structure, but I was still experimenting to see how I actually wanted to tell the story. Still, I definitely consider this episode canon, even if the second half exists on kinda shaky grounds. And the leaf monster? Yeah, we don't talk about that. If the cops ask, the dog is a good boy. He's a good boy! He's a good boy! Beware of sharks! Inside Bloop Diet brings the normal formula back of Bloop meeting up with fish and then trying to eat said fish, leading to hijinks. He starts talking more as the series progresses, as I wasn't about to make an entire cartoon series out of the main character only saying his own name. Bloop ain't fitting into a Pokeball. We introduce more regulars here like Sunfish and Breckfish. It also contains one of the most popular visuals that this series, or any of my series, has ever produced up to this point. The little boy and his mom noticing the pool shark stretching infinitely across the sky. So clearly, Bloop ate the Earth, which he's currently on. It's a paradox, yes, and it's as canon as can be. I will say the blooper part is a bit, iffy on canon, but simply being a crossover doesn't mean it isn't canon per se. It just means that I don't take it nearly as seriously in regards to the storytelling. Kinda like a side quest in a video game. I mean, not necessarily, but ignoring it wouldn't impact the storyline at all. Space Whale Stinking Up the Bathroom was a completely unrelated short originally that was a parody of a dumb cartoon I'd seen at the time. I always liked the character of Space Whale, and I figured that this skit would fit pretty well with the whole eating the Earth storyline, so I went ahead and threw it in there. So yeah, Space Whale was demolishing a bathroom in a skyscraper while Bloop was eating the entire planet. Space Whale can change size, being a bit of a celestial imp himself. And I don't mean a literal imp when I say that, I'm saying that like he's a magical being that can use his power for really stupid pranks. He'd get along with Goblin Shark, I guess. Maybe. Or they'd just prank each other until the cows came home. Space Whale notices the skyline and swims off the planet to investigate, leading to a break from the storyline apparently, as the dreaded holiday season was rapidly approaching. The Halloween episodes. Halloween 2022 saw me bring other Bobert-Rob characters back into the limelight, like Dinosaur Rob and regular Rob from the Siblings cartoons. Yeah, so I like to use myself as a character in my cartoons, so what? I'm only really mentioning these 3 cartoons because Humanity actually shows up in the second cartoon dressed as a vampire, and he's a Bloop Diet regular. I'd say that it isn't canon, but the glitter in his skin in the later episodes actually originates from this cartoon, so I guess I'd have to say that it is indeed canon. So yeah, Dinosaur Rob exists in Bloop Diet, basically. Although I will say because it's a holiday episode, it stands on kinda shaky ground in regards to canon. I'll touch on that more later. Bloop Diet. Blooper's sad cat dance is a silly one-off idea. It does lead to Bloop eating Blooper finally, and Blooper does appear floating around inside Bloop's stomach later, so, I mean, it's a dumb cartoon, but it's also canon, if unimportant. The Bloop Diet, who smells, is the first time that I can definitively say that this is not canon. Completely not canon. First of all, Pool Shark is back, and he's outside of Bloop, so red flag there. Also, this one was based on a random community poll that I was running at the time. Who smells the best? Where Bloop won despite him actually stinking. Fans treated it as a popularity contest, not a literal question of who would actually smell better. Him stinking is a joke that returns later on in the series, but largely this is just a silly video with the characters themselves. Nothing more. The humor tends to not be bound by the canon of the storyline, so a joke being referenced later doesn't mean that the cartoon where the joke originated is canon. The Bloop Diet iceberg saw the introduction of Helicoprion, a prehistoric shark with a unique mouth. The episode starts with Bloop basically making a reference to the internet comments saying that he's just an iceberg, a joke about the bloop noise being attributed to icebergs melting in '97. We reveal in a bit of dialogue in a later episode that Bloop does indeed have internet access, so I'd say this one's pretty canon too. Also, Helicopter Scorpion playing accordion? I mean, obviously he's canon. He's the most canon character in this entire series. I mean, look at him. He'd fit right into a cannon. A helicopter scorpion-shaped cannon with an accordion sidecar. Pew! Beware of sharks as you escape the Bloop Diet, Space Whale, is a word soup of a title. It's also a direct follow-up to the Space Whale bathroom sketch and his discovery of being inside the bloop. So yes, completely and wholly canon. It's also the first time I dedicated an entire Bloop Diet episode to one idea. It's not a collection of random skits stitched together. It's actually like a dedicated thing being like, this is a step in the storyline. We're gonna focus on this one thing. It took me 2 months to get around to doing a single episode that actually focuses on the storyline, but it is what it is. Canon. What does a humanity sound like is just a silly parody idea I had that involved Hugh being a jerk to a nature documentary crew harassing him. I only mentioned this one because he has glitter skin in it, so technically it's canon, even if it is completely inconsequential. It's canon a humanity storyline thread, I guess. The Bloop vs. Megalodon Trash Talk is the official introduction to the Megalodon as a character. This episode just sets up the rivalry and acts as the beginning of the Megalodon story arc. And yes, I was trying to compartmentalize the story into arcs like this. I guess Space Whale was kind of the finale of the first one because Bloop ate the Earth in the first episode. Canon all the way through. Goblin Shark's Day Out is a Goblin Shark-centric episode, exploring what he does in an average day. He discusses names with Helicoprion, gives a pep talk to Bloop after the Megalodon intro episode, and reveals his roommate on the sea floor, SCP-3000. All completely canon. The Bloop vs. Reaper Leviathan was the very first commission episode, pitting Bloop against a video game character. Now, this wasn't the very first video game character in the series, that was Blooper, but Blooper's inclusion was simply based on the names being similar. It did open the door to logic giving way when popularity demands it though. I'd love to say that this is non-canon, but we've seen Reaper and the Subnautica gang so often since, it's hard for me to deny it. It's not a part of the main storyline by any means, but it is a pretty substantial subplot if nothing else. Bloop Diet DLC, if you will. The Bloop Diet Hard to Swallow introduces Bloop's parents. It also covers another fan request, Lion's Mane Jellyfish, and the 67-pound goldfish, which was in the news at the time. Fans will never stop begging for the characters to have family members, so adding Bloop's parents helped to satiate that, I think. Canon as can be. The Bloop Diet Only in Ohio was clearly me responding to the overwhelming amount of Only in Ohio references I kept getting on the Pool Shark shorts. So I made a literal imp-style character, a popular character trope in the series, that was a visual embodiment of the meme itself. I'd say it isn't canon, but it may turn into something important later, so we'll leave it in the unknown bin for now. The Bloop vs. Megalodon Bloopid is Megalodon giving Bloop more of a hard time. Canon, as it's simply an extension of the Trash Talk episode. Merry Fishmas Bloop Cookies for Christmas is just a reaction to fans wanting holiday episodes. I really don't like holiday episodes of any property, but I figured it wouldn't hurt to do one or two once in a while. Bloop meets another food-based fish here, gingerbread fish, and they discuss the ridiculous holiday of Fishmas. Bloop eats his new friend, leading to gingerbread fish decorating Bloop's innards with bioluminescent fish. No idea where he got those glowing fish, but I assume he found them inside Bloop's belly. Bloop does eat a lot. Though I'm not a fan of holiday episodes, some of the jokes presented here do kind of come back later, so it's a kind of canon. Maybe we could seclude the holiday episodes in their own timeline so I don't have to bother with it. Having holiday episodes is really problematic for this series because it means that I have to try and explain why it's taken 2 years for most of these events to happen. That's not the kind of storyline I can tell by myself. I work fast, yes, but not that fast. Fans constantly beg for random shit which ends up getting in the way of the storytelling, and so if I'm gonna sit here and say that like, oh yes, all of this is 100% canon, there's no way to say, oh, they celebrate Halloween 30 times, but everything only takes place over the course of a couple of months. That would not make sense. I have to keep the viewers happy, so that's my concession. Holiday episodes are in their own continuity, as far as I'm concerned, but the jokes transcend everything. And I know, you're gonna say, well, humanity has his glitter skin from the first Halloween thing in every other episode since, but that's based on a visual joke, and that transcends, so we can just say that, like, I literally filmed these things, and, like, we couldn't get the glitter off of his skin, so we had to include that into the main storyline, despite the fact that, like, you know, the holiday episodes are their own thing. Something like that, right? New Year! 2023 brought us Beware of Sharks in Grandma's Bed. This was just me trying to use the pool shark in more of a standalone skit. The character was clearly really popular, and I had to figure out a way to actually use him in a future cartoon without him being stuck in Bloop's mouth. I liked the cartoon, but you guys didn't seem to be very interested in it, so the concept of doing sketches like that fell by the wayside quick. It's basically canon, as the grandma story is just the dad telling Little Red Riding Hood in a weird way to his daughter, inspired by the pool shark sighting in real life. Bloop's lame? Megalodon's talk show reveals all is another Megalodon insults Bloop cartoon. I really love the idea that Megalodon just sits around and tries to come up with new ways of insulting Bloop, and the talk show thing was like the cherry on the top of that idea. It's basically canon, though it's kind of irrelevant to the plot. Bloop family dinner, humanity's invited, puts us in a typical Bloop family dinner, obviously. Humanity shows up in the crossfire of Mommy Bloop feeding on dirt, and we're introduced to the Bloop species' general eating habits and how Bloop himself is a really picky eater. We also learn that Bloop doesn't like surfacing because he doesn't want to be found by the humans, despite attacking boats before. It's rare when he does that, and from this point in the story forward, it's generally understood that he isn't surfacing anymore to avoid detection. So, he's unaware of the skyline being, well... Will Bloop help or hinder Gargantuan Leviathan? Is the second commission cartoon. Introducing fan favorite, Gargi, the Gargantuan Leviathan. He who was offended by Bloop's constant rudeness. The first Reaper Leviathan cartoon revealed that they were on vacation, and this reveals that Gargantuan Leviathan's also on vacation with him. They want to know where to find the Mariana Trench because it's the deepest point on the planet, and Gargi's like 5 kilometers long. Suck it, nerds! It's canon to the Reaper storyline bits, I'd say. Subnautica DLC storyline, essentially. The Bloop vs. Megalodon, the final showdown, sees us finally witnessing the epic fight between Bloop and Megalodon. It's also one of the few times I actually bothered to make a fight sequence at all. I want to focus on the comedy in this series, not the fights. We're introduced to Megalodon's sister, Meg, and it's revealed that Megalodon's name is actually Dawn. Not to mention the reason for the fight to begin with being the infamous kiss that saw hundreds of thousands of viewers reaching for their puke emojis. Ayo! Canon as can be. So that's the first half of the first season, basically, depending on how you structure it. I wanted to cover the entire year in this video, but this is taking way too long to talk about. Like, good lord, there's so much in this series! This seems like a good breaking point, so I'll be back to talk about the next parts of the storyline in the next installment. If you enjoyed this, be sure to show your support. Stay bloopin'! Or something. And if you want to show your support in a more monetary way, there's a membership. Click the join button, find out more. Peace! Stay bloopin'!